You may recall this quote from the beginning of The Art of Poetry in Chapter 1. Shira Wolowski writes, "Almost every revolution in poetry makes diction a rallying cry." And this idea that when massive change in the way that poetry is written comes about, it often focuses on words. That is certainly going to be the case with the next poet to whom we turn, a poet by the name of William Wordsworth. And we've jumped a couple hundred years from the time of John Donne. We've skipped a lot of significant poets, but that's all right. Wordsworth began his poetic career in earnest about the year 1798. He had been writing poetry a little bit earlier than that, but the really important stuff begins that year, when he struck up a close friendship with another poet, a man by the name of Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The two of them, largely in an effort to fund a trip to Germany, decided that they would publish a volume of poetry that they wrote jointly together. And the idea was that Wordsworth would write a series of poems on the common kind of everyday things. And the image here is of a yew tree. One of the poems that Wordsworth wrote is called Lines Written on a Yew Tree. And Coleridge, in contrast, would write poems on the supernatural. This is an illustration by Gustave Doré of Coleridge's poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And you can see here the spirit of the sea rising up. You've got sea monsters running around down here. This was a poem about a mariner, a sailor, who committed an awful atrocity against nature and then was condemned to wander the world telling his story. You can see how the supernatural fits into that. The Lyrical Ballads, with a few other poems, was published in 1798, and it went through several more editions, the most notable of which was published 2 years later in 1800. In the 1800 edition, one of the things that Wordsworth does is to include a preface. And your reading for Monday, for the next class, part of it will be selections from the preface to the Lyrical Ballads. And in that document, Wordsworth lays out principles that really do hammer home this idea that he is hoping to see a change in the way that diction is used in poetry. He's reacting against the conventions of poetry from the previous 50 to 100 years. So as you're reading the preface to the Lyrical Ballads, what I want you to look for are these four things. What is a poet for William Wordsworth? What should a poet's role in society be? What makes good poetry? And finally, how does poetry happen? I know that this is a reading poetry class, and because of that, we will not read a whole lot of prose, but this document to me seems like an important enough one that I want you to spend a little bit of time with it, in addition to beginning to read some of Wordsworth's poems. Look forward to discussing the preface with you in class and to applying it to some of the ideas of Wordsworth's that we see in Wordsworth's poems.